Welcome to episode 207 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Daytona Dreams and Vegas Nightmares edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. I'm your host and barely functioning 49er fan, Philip Matthew, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar, and the owner of the Tate Fogleman Algorithm that will be coming out of hibernation from the winter for the first time this year, and it'll be busy because it'll be working 2 weeks in a row. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, brother?
Well, I'm doing great, I don't know. I can't say I'm doing great because I think I'm on the same side of the fence as you are with the Super Bowl. But, I'm doing all right, I guess. But I put on a parlay for the game and did not come up with anything. I would be a lot more joyful if that came through. But at least, football's over and everything, and we can put that behind us until September, at least in terms of reality. But Daytona's back, racing's back and everything, and I feel like as good as ever is looking forward to all the racing across NASCAR, F1, IndyCar, and all the other racing that we talk about here on this show. So, as always, ready to get into it.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into NASCAR heavy today, talking about all three major series, previewing them, because obviously they'll be racing at Daytona for Speed Week this coming weekend. Of course, weather-wise, it may not exactly be the greatest week of weather in the history of Daytona for February, but we'll see what happens with that. The Daytona 500, of course, being the big one, the Great American Race. Winning the race, you are a Daytona 500 champion, even if it is a demolition derby, even if you ran through the guys that were leading to win the race. It is the Daytona 500, and a lot of legends have won it. A lot of mediocrities have won it, and there are a lot of people that can say they've never won that big race. And we'll get into all of that. Obviously, we'll get into the game and Kermit the Frog staking his claim to being the new Brady, the new GOAT. He did it yesterday, and so we'll get into all that, what went wrong for the 49ers, the comparison now between those three, Kermit and Kelce and Andrew Ryad with New England in terms of Brady, and insert tight end here, but more like Gronk because he's basically the comparison, and Bill Belichick, and what's next, I guess, for the 49ers after losing this game in the first ever playoff overtime or whatever, this new playoff overtime system that was akin to the college system, and Kyle Shanahan picked the wrong side with that, and kept on kicking. Well, yeah, okay, I'm going to get into that in a little bit. We'll preview all three major series, make our championship picks. There's some F1 news, key news going on. The Roundup is finally back after winter break. We'll be talking about Supercars since they'll be back a couple weeks from now at Bathurst for the Bathurst 500 to start the 2024 season. MotoGP is having their different bike reveals and more to come. Rally Sweden for the WRC, their second race of the season. Extreme has their opener, and news of an American team. While Ganassi is leaving Extreme, another American team is joining Extreme with a certain 7-time champion that used to once upon a time be an off-road racer before he became 7-time. We'll talk all about that, and then we will preview all three major races at Daytona, make our picks, and Josh will get the algorithm out, which is more likely to be accurate than my picks. So we'll see with that. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of iRacing in a sim segment, and we'll call it a day. And who knows, maybe we'll be live casting the Daytona 500 next week depending on how the weather is. But first, we have to talk about Super Bowl 58, Chiefs and the Niners in Las Vegas. They did a great job in Vegas with that, similar to how they did with F1. It's been a pretty crazy time in Las Vegas, and they've done great with two major events. Not really surprised by that. The field was whatever. The field played a role. It was slippery. People had issues of footing. The Niners literally lost one of their team leaders running on the field. And I didn't even know it. Like, I didn't notice it. Maybe it was because I was watching the Nickelodeon broadcast, but the Greenlaw loss wasn't as big of a deal initially, at least in the first half, because the defensive line was at another level, getting into Kermit's face. The amount of holding that Kansas City usually does wasn't as, I guess they decided to wait till the second half. Because they were allowing a lot of free runners. The Niners, Chase Young had his best game as a 49er. Eric Armstead, who is the annual Walter Payton Man of the Year recipient for the 49ers, California kid, he had a great game, or at least the first half was one of the best first halves he's ever had in his career. Nick Bosa was able to kind of run roughshod. The defense showed up in the first half, and the offense, to be fair, was there as well. They just really weren't able to execute in the red zone or close drives out. But because Kansas City was not doing anything, it was okay. Granted, being up 10-3 or whatever the hell is not enough against Kermit the Frog, and it got there. Once we got to the second half, though, it was a different game. The Niners were up 10-3 at half. They then were outscored 22-12 in the second half and overtime. What happens in the defense, I don't know. I was having this conversation with a good buddy of mine, Professor J. This whole day, this has been nearly 24 hours since the game ended. Probably by the time we end this episode, it'll be. But I don't know. That first drive, I think, Josh, there were signs that the wheels were starting to come off, at least on the 49ers side. They had dominated the line of scrimmage for the first half, but then Patrick Mahomes literally picked them apart, went down the field, and they scored points. Then they had a miscue on a punt. That was a touchdown. And you cannot give that motherfucker the chance to control the game, and they did. He played his best Super Bowl he ever has. And so, what do you expect? Even if he played the way he played in the two other Super Bowls he won, the Niners were still going to lose that game because of how poor they were executing on both sides of the ball. The play calling by Kyle Shanahan is something that bothers me with an absolute. It's been a thing that's bothered me for 7 years of him being there. It didn't matter when they sucked, but it matters when you're in big games. I was trying to come up with the comparison with who I think he is as a coach, and one thing is he's definitely not his dad. He ain't McVay either, because the motherfucker was able to put a game plan together and win a Super Bowl. He also was part of one of the worst Super Bowls in the history of mankind. You have a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl twice against the Kansas City Chiefs, and you can't finish the job. Come on, man. They're not going to get rid of him. I know it. He's the best coach the 49ers have had since Jim Harbaugh. He's a great regular season coach. He's Marty Schottenheimer 2.0. Professor J's he's like McDermott, where they get tight in big spots when it gets real, when you're in crunch time, they pucker up and get real tight and you can't fucking put a nail. I forget the line that Charles Barkley said about Chris Carr back in the day, but that's literally what it is. I mean, the offensive play calling, Brock Purdy played a great game. Not a game like what Mahomes had, but he played a game. It had nothing to do with him. He said he took the hit for it, but it wasn't him. It wasn't CMC, even though he laid the ball down randomly in the first quarter. Jawan Jennings had the best game of his career, I think, in that game, and would have been the MVP. Probably with a actual holding call or whatever, there would have been he would have had the touchdown that would have won the game, probably, or at least it would have kept the game going. They would have won the game in regulation, actually, there. But this one is bad. This one's the worst for me of the three that they've lost. This one is gonna stick for a while. It's hard to get to this game. The Niners have been in this era like the last, I think 12 years or 13 years or whatever. 13 years, they've been in the NFC Championship game 7 times. And I think that's right, 13 years. They've been in it 7 times. They've went to the Super Bowl 3 times. And every single one of those situations, there's been a loss to end the season. Whether it's in the NFC Championship game and in the case of they lost to the Rams and the Rams won the Super Bowl. They lost to the Eagles last year. Of course, they went and lost in the Super Bowl, so, whatever. They lost to the Giants in, 11 or 12. Yeah, in 11.
Yeah, Kyle Williams.
And the Kyle Williams disaster. And they went and beat Tom Brady. And then Seattle. So, yeah, in 3 of the 4 times that they actually lost, the team that went to the Super Bowl won. So, I mean, it's really nauseating. It wasn't just a gut punch. It's hard to describe. I mean, it just felt horrible. And I don't know where to go with it or think about it. It's one of the worst losses I've watched as a fan, and I've been a fan of sports for 30-something years, and I watched the 49ers win a Super Bowl, but that was a long time ago. It's the same way as with the Daytona 500, and I think that's probably why, I'm not just because the Niners are my favorite sports team, like ball sport team, but it's why it matters to me so much more as a fan. This race that's coming up on Sunday and this game that took place yesterday. But when push comes to shove, the Super Bowl is about greatness. And greatness is on the other side wearing number 15 and has a Kermit the Frog voice. And the fact is, that's what it was. Boils down to period, end story. Patrick Mahomes did what he had to do. And by the end there, he just was toying with the Niners. It was a joke. They drove down the field in that overtime drive like it was nothing. The defense finally just ran out of gas. And, I mean, they were exposed. Their middle of the field for the Niners defense was exposed badly, while the middle of the field for the Kansas City Chiefs, which is where they needed to be abused, was let off the hook. Conservative play calling on both sides of the ball by Kyle Shanahan as the head coach and then Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator. Granted, losing Dre Greenlaw is a problem. Granted, there were some other injuries. It seemed like every injury was a 49er. Deebo Samuel got hurt during the game. George Kittle got hurt during the game. John Feliciano got hurt during the game. Probably some other guys got hurt during the game. I can't remember anymore. But at the end of the day, like it probably was a thing. Oh, they're the healthiest they've been in years. It was probably part of it. Not supposed to have that. You're not supposed to have nice things. And the Niners, with Kyle Shanahan as the coach, are going to go and blow a Super Bowl lead. And I'm going to let you talk, Josh, because I mean, I could go, there's so many different ways I can go with this, and none of them are really good, but it's just sad. I knew I probably should have just hedged and picked against myself and picked the Kansas City Chiefs just for the sake of it to do the reverse curse, but whatever. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a lot, Phil, and a lot to take in, and I've just, I mean, me personally, I would just like to be correct in picking against Mahomes in the Super Bowl for once. I mean, for me, I wanted to see the 49ers win because I'm tired of seeing the Chiefs, win, and I don't think Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's really great, but I'm not wanting to give him the GOAT title yet because he has to match the same record at least as the actual GOAT in Tom Brady, and I'm very hesitant to, while player is still playing and he's only been playing for 6 years or so, to give him that title so early and everything. But he's definitely established himself and all that, but certainly needs to have play as long as Peyton Manning and as long as Tom Brady did, and win the same amount of times to truly be the GOAT, in my opinion. And it's not appropriate to give that title until they're well into their career, and it's clear that he is a legend, but he's not the legend like Tom Brady yet, in my opinion. And let's wait until he's 38 to say this or whatever. And if he has 8 Super Bowls by then fine. But there's that factor as well. And for me, like watching this game, they got out to a 10-point lead in the first half. It was 10-0, and the Chiefs got a field goal at the end of the half. Then it's 10-3, and then 10-6, and then the real game changer was the 2 fumbles, I think, and the missed extra point. The McCaffrey, I think they would have gotten a touchdown on the first drive of the game for the 49ers if McCaffrey didn't fumble there, which was very uncharacteristic, I think, for him to fumble the ball like that. And it wasn't like he got popped or anything. It just seemed like it just kind of got lodged out of his hands there going down on that running play. But I mean, it's a very defensive game throughout the first half, and really overall just a very defensive game. But it came down to those critical fumbles. The fumble later with the punt return, which the Niners just had. They just got off a drive there where they got really tired and they forced a punt, and then as soon as they got back onto the field, immediate touchdown. So it's just hard. It's important. It's critical to not turn the ball over on your own side of the field, especially that deep. And they basically spotted them a free touchdown right there, starting on the 10-yard line, and everything. So and then later on the extra point that they missed after getting the touchdown, which would have actually been from the same distance had they decided to go for the field goal. That came back to bite them, because that opened the door for them to only need a field goal to extend the game into overtime for the Chiefs. So that was very critical there. But and then the overtime decision, a lot of people are talking about, well, should the 49ers have picked deferring to go and wait for what the Chiefs were going to do and then decide. And I mean, that's a very valuable argument there. But then also, if you score a touchdown on your first possession, then you either force them to match you and then have to get the ball back after that, or force them to go for 2 in the touchdown, which I think the Chiefs were planning to do had the 49ers scored a touchdown and everything. And even then, they got the field goal. You got to play defense, and I think it's very shocking how kind of that went down. But as soon as the Chiefs were getting like 3 to 4 yards a carry with when they're handing off the ball to the running back with Pacheco there, you just knew that it was going to be really tough to limit them on subsequent down and distance when they had a favorable down and distance off of first down. So it was, you could see there that they were starting to get pretty tired there. And then of course, 2nd and 14, and they lined up, five players, or not 5 players, but 5 yards off the line of the wide receivers, and gave them very, very favorable yard and distance for that scenario and everything. So they have that, and then of course going right down the field and getting a touchdown. The last play, I mean, that's literally the same play that they ran last year against the Eagles to win that game. And then also that was the same play. I think they pulled that off the Jaguars playbook. I'm pretty sure Peterson or whatever shared that with Reid, and with motioning him inside and then snapping the ball and motioning him back out to the outside. It's a very easy play to get to create yards and to get an easy matchup exploitation there, and that was a very, very easy touchdown with play design that they were able to do. So that ended very quickly there, but especially with time running out, and Tony Romo was leading everybody on, thinking that they're gonna go to a second overtime and everything. So which almost happened, but just a interesting way to end the game like that. The criticism with Shanahan, people saying, he didn't run the ball enough in the second half and pass too much. Well, I mean, I was reading about this on ESPN, and the formations that they were getting, they're facing or going up against the Chiefs were daring them to throw throughout the third quarter, and they had I think 6 or 9 straight passing plays, and they didn't hand it off to McCaffrey, and it was because those weren't favorable matchups for running, and they would be running into a stacked box there with 8 players in the up towards the line of scrimmage for the Chiefs. So those runs would have run down the clock, but they would also gotten nothing out of those plays. So the passing plays just didn't work for them. And so you have to really give a lot of credit to the Chiefs defense. I think it's me personally, I think the MVP should be Chris Jones or Steve Spagnuolo they can't give it to a coach, but the game plan that they were able to create throughout the year and throughout this playoffs, I think is really what won them this title and everything. Mahomes did what he needed to do, but I think really it's the Chiefs defense and game changing pressure with Chris Jones, third down with on third down and goal, I think, or 3rd and 4 from the 5-yard line for the 49ers, and he pressured Brock Purdy into incompletion there. He had Ayuk coming open, but he wasn't able to see him before getting the ball out. So it was unfortunate for the 49ers in that situation. And then 3rd and 5 on the field goal in regulation, they get blitzed. And so, it's tough. And, the 49ers, they run a lot of condensed formations, which is what's worked for them this year. But, that's also leaves them susceptible to slot blitzes, which is what the Chiefs were doing a lot in this game, what they have been doing a lot this season. So, it was always going to be a tough deal going up against this Chiefs defense and everything. So that's why I won the game. And, I don't necessarily think that Kyle Shanahan really choked the game. It's just that the Chiefs just out executed them in this game, and everything's not out coached or anything. Just they just straight up beat them and everything, and that's what makes it hard to swallow, because you can say that in the past they beat themselves or they got too conservative and everything, and I just personally feel like, well, except for the last defensive drive for the 49ers, just feel like that they did everything they needed to do. They laid it all on the table and they still lost. So that's what I think makes it gut punching, I guess, and for you, the worst loss you've ever seen. So there's a lot to take away from that, but that's ultimately what I think. And then I had to mention at the top of the show, had a parlay which took the Chiefs took the 49ers winning, and then had McCaffrey over 90 yards, Deebo Samuel over 16.5. I had Patrick Mahomes over 260 yards passing, Brock Purdy under 248 yards and a half passing, Fred Warner with 7.5 tackles, Patrick Mahomes with 1.5 touchdowns, and then Kelce with 2 touchdowns and McCaffrey with 2 touchdowns. So, I had a very optimistic matchup there. But some of those played out. I got 3 out of those, like 8 or 9 scenarios that happened. But I felt close on some of them. But yeah, just never happened. Especially with the Kelce 2 touchdowns, that was definitely a scam for sure. There, so should not have taken that. But he still made critical plays down the stretch for them, even if he didn't get a touchdown. So. You have that. And then also shout out to Chris Conley, all-pro wide receiver. We tried to speak that one into existence in the Jaguar fan base a couple years ago because he just showed up from the Chiefs after a couple years there, and spent 2 years on the Jaguars. But he had a 18-yard reception in the first quarter, and then had 2 very critical special teams plays there. With downing the ball on the 1-yard line, and then making that amazing tackle on the 1-yard line against the Chiefs return man there. So, honestly, at that point, I was like, shoot, if it's possible, I'm going to put Chris Conley as MVP for the Super Bowl. So, but I couldn't find the Super Bowl MVP prop on Hard Rock, so couldn't do that. So, that would have been funny. But, just a unfortunate loss, and, what can you do about it now? But, just it is what it is. And, the 49ers, it was their window closing, in this, they've been here to the Super Bowl twice, NFC Championship game multiple times, and, since Shanahan is the coach, but, with, still not feeling the effects of the Trey Lance trade, and, that not working out, and you have players getting older, you just wonder how much longer are they going to be able to sustain this level of success, and, be able to come back next year with people getting older and stuff. So that's definitely going to be, something to look out for. So, that's what makes it critical. It's so hard to get to the Super Bowl, and it's, even harder to win it. And, for me as a Jags fan, just watching these 2 teams play, I'm like, yeah, the Jaguars are like nowhere near where the 49ers or the Chiefs are. So, it's just hard to get there. And then once you get there, it's hard to win it, and it's hard to get back to that point if you lose. So that's what makes it so painful.
Yeah, well said, and covered a lot there. I want to go and if I'm going to start blame, there's plenty of things I could just go and blame it, but then I've basically came to the conclusion that it was, like you said, with Spags and that defense, really Chris Jones, and then L'Jarius Sneed and whatever that other guy, safety guy or other corner. Those 3 guys really are elite players, and they all played at a high level yesterday. And it was Mahomes. It's funny, you talked about daring the Niners to go and throw the ball in the third quarter. They got away from the run because they wouldn't have went anywhere. The thing with that is, like, Christian McCaffrey has went against stacked boxes on and off probably this whole season, and the Niners offensive line is a run first offensive with the zone blocking scheme, and even with the stacked boxes, they've been able to do a decent job running against that. The notion of keeping the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands is there, even if you're going to go and say you ran the ball. I personally would rather go down in flames giving the ball to the offensive player of the year and the guy who was the MVP, in my mind, the MVP of the league. I would rather have him have the ball there, not because I don't trust Brock Purdy. Let's not get into that whole thing. In reality, there's things that I wish Brock Purdy was allowed to have. I don't know, like George Kittle. 2 Super Bowls he's been in, and I think he has like 3 receptions. And the point is, the middle of that, their linebackers are not good. Other than Chris Jones, can you name anybody else on that defensive line? I don't even think the families of the people that are on that defensive line know that they're on that defensive line. I mean, literally, you don't know any of that crap on that defense outside of those 3 players. And I don't, McDuffie, there you go. I just remember the guy's name. That's 3 players. You're literally telling me you have George Kittle, who's the best tight end in the NFL, and he gets 1 reception in the Super Bowl. And you have Christian McCaffrey, and you get away from what was working when you dominated the line of scrimmage in the first half. Granted, you only were up 10-3, and it literally took a last-second field goal the end of the first half for that to happen. But, I mean, I don't know. Like, Kyle Shanahan, it's interesting to me how he is a run-first guy. His dad was a run-first guy. The difference was he had John Elway, and you had the kind of guys, the dynamic offense that he had. He finally has the quarterback. That wasn't the problem. I said it earlier. Brock Purdy wasn't the problem. But who you're throwing to and when you're throwing to them and at what route, the route trees that you're using against that defense, they're a deep ball. They're a medium 15 yards and above defense. They're going to go and take that away. The reality is this is a West Coast system. It's supposed to be 15 and under, and one person that really exploits that is your tight end, who is one of your momentum guys. You lose your momentum guy on defense immediately, absolutely right at the start, and it was jarring, but they were able to fade that through the first half. You gave George Kittle the ball once, or threw the ball at him once in the first half that I can remember. Are you for real? I mean, come on. Like, if you're going to tell me that he sucks, then it's one thing. Like, if you're going to tell me he's a bum or like he's fucking George Kittle, bro. Like, he's one of the best tight ends, period. You have that fucking stiff on the other side, that cocksucker out over there that has the red-lipped chick up in the booth that they showed every 10 seconds. I mean, he was running around at 0.2 miles an hour, and he was somehow or another able to fade the whole defense multiple times later in the game when he's moving at the speed of molasses. George Kittle's moving. He had his freaking left arm wasn't even working at one point late in the game. He came back in the game. I'd rather take him with one arm than some of the other shit that they were running. No, we're not going to throw him the ball. We're just literally going to try to force the ball to a guy who has a bad hamstring, and we're going to force the ball in a double coverage into Brandon Ayuk. That just makes no sense to me. You have Juice. Juice actually, not just because his wife designs great clothes or whatever. Juice had a couple of big plays early in the game and then ceased to exist the rest of the game. They had no answer for him. Why don't you just give him the effing ball? In another person, you have Elijah Mitchell. Dude has been injured for 3/4 of the year. He comes back. They barely use him whole year because it's Kyle Shanahan. The dude was going off for 5-6 yards a carry with relative ease. McCaffrey was grinding, getting his 4 yards, whatever, 4.5 yards a carry. The Niners had basically on defense taken away the 2 best offensive players on their team, the Kansas City, in Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. But you're not giving it to Christian McCaffrey. And you have guys that are exploiting their defense, and you're not giving it to them. You're trying to go over the top because you need to prove to everybody that you're a genius, and that's great. You're a fucking genius, Kyle Shanahan, and you have 3 losses in the Super Bowl too. So God bless you. I'm glad you're a genius, because losing in the Super Bowl sucks. It makes a lot of fans feel bad about themselves. It makes fans really wonder why they watch football. It's I don't know. Like, it's really pathetic. I don't know what to say. This compares, we were talking about it offline, like this compares to a certain Daytona 500, which we'll get into in a little bit. This compares to Game 7 of the 2001 World Series, which I mean, I knew they were probably going to lose anyway, and they had been lucky, the Yankees, to get to that point. But they weren't going to fade that wackadoodle, Royd Rager, and Schilling, and the big unit. And then you have, like, Game 7 of the 94 NBA Finals when the Knicks lost to the Houston Rockets. And this is just as bad. This is the worst of them all. I mean, the Avalanche have made the finals and they've won 3 times. They've made it 3 times. They've won 3 times. So, I mean, losing to Detroit back in the day really sucked, but that wasn't the finals. Yeah, it's just, it's really sad. I haven't been this depressed about a loss. And I've watched them lose plenty. I've watched them be the laughing stock of the league. They got to this game and they were within who knows how many plays from possibly winning the Super Bowl. But it's like the monkey that Steve Young, the proverbial monkey on the back that Steve Young talked about that he got rid of in that night in Miami when he threw 6 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl. And the Niners destroyed the San Diego Chargers. That is the monkey that's on Kyle Shanahan's back, and if he wants to get rid of it, he's going to have to change some of the ways he does things. You can say it's Steve Wilkes. You can come up with any number of people, but one person that has to be there has to be some voice in his ear. And I saw that. I forget, one of the 49er pundit people said it. Like, somebody has to be in his ear and is like, dude, you really need to be staying with what works here and commit to it. At the end of the day, if you're going to lose, go out in a blaze of glory running with Christian McCaffrey and throwing the ball to guys that are actually going to be open instead of trying to force people open like they were doing. I mean, you're not putting Brock in plus positions. But the point is, Brock Purdy, unlike any quarterback that has been around since Jeff Garcia, works around it. And he's able to do shit that, very few quarterbacks are able to do. And I give him credit for that. And he is a leader. And if anything, you need to have a quarterback in this league. The Niners have a quarterback. And he's not a game manager. Jimmy Garoppolo is a game manager. Like in your case, Blake Bortles, game manager. Brock Purdy ain't a game manager. He was standing up to Kermit the Frog, and it just wasn't there a couple of times, couple of big plays. Chris Jones made stops. And I mean, it is what it is, but it really fucking sucks. And I don't know. And Juwan Jennings had the game of his career. He's a restricted free agent. Brandon Ayuk needs a contract. The offensive line is a problem in general. Trent Williams is getting older. You need to have somebody that will eventually replace him. How do you replace the best offensive line in the NFL? They have issues in the secondary, and they haven't addressed either of those areas properly for years. It's about time they do that in the draft. And you have guys that were able to make a difference, rookies that were able to make a difference on the Kansas City side. And even with their cap situation, doesn't matter. But then it's Kermit the Frog. I mean, what are you going to do? All right. I will see how therapeutic that really is for me later on. I'm not going to give that cocksucker and his older brother who's drunk off his ass any more airtime than he needs, because CBS gave them plenty of airtime and his girlfriend. So that's enough. The comparison to the Patriots, you made the point. He needs to win 3 more before we really can get into that conversation, I guess. But right now,
he's on track, but he's got to do it.
And his division, just like the AFC East was for Brady, is basically a walkover. Yes, Jim Harbaugh is coming to the Chargers, so maybe that'll change things up. Antonio Pierce is now the full-on head coach with the Raiders. Denver has Sean Payton, but they don't have a quarterback. The Raiders don't have a quarterback. the Chargers have a quarterback coming back from a serious injury. So who's going to really, and then you add all the other stuff who's really going to beat Kansas City in the division. And with that also means likely scenario of having home field, which this was the first year he didn't have it, went on the road twice and won, and then won the Super Bowl. So it's like, well, how are you going to fade this freaking guy? It's very hard to imagine how that's going to be. It's got that same kind of feeling, but we will see. It's pathetic. I keep on saying pathetic. It's just the worst, really. As a fan, the worst I felt watching a game happen in a long time. So, yeah. All right. So we will move forward. We will preview all three major NASCAR series. So let's start with the Cup Series. Young Ryan Blaney is the champion, and even that pig Jenna Fryer went and gave him credit as being more than likely the most popular driver in the sport, which honestly I believe he is, because he actually has a personality, and you can see his fans. It's not just like a poser gimmick like it is with William Clyde Elliott II. But it's interesting bringing up his buddy old Clyde. Had a terrible year last year, didn't make the playoffs, and because of injuries and other going and running over Denny Hamlin on purpose at the 600. What is he going to do? His teammate Kyle Larson has become pseudo lead dog there at Hendrick Motorsports. Does he come back and reassert himself as a alpha, not only in his team but in the Cup Series? You got that with Hendrick. I mean, Bowman's coming back full time after an injury with a new crew chief. Or no, Blake Harris is still there. My bad. That's of course Caitlin Vincey's husband. So that's the only reason why I know Blake Harris's name. I'm sorry. He's a really good crew chief, but I like Caitlin Vincey. So I like Mrs. V. I'm just like I like Sunny D. I like Mrs. V. Yeah, I mean, you got Hendrick Motorsports and Gibbs in the clash. We talked about it in the last episode. The Toyotas, they look strong. Will they be with now an increased presence and another 3 cars at times? Usually will be 2 with Legacy this year with Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek. What can Christopher Bell do after 2 consecutive playoff appearances? Can he finally come through and win that championship? Can Denny Hamlin finally win the title after basically doing everything else in the Cup Series? Does Martin Truex have one more in him? And then Keebler Gibbs, it's a matter of when, not if, he will win a Cup race. He dominated the Clash. I'm not thinking he's going to do it at Daytona, but I would figure that he is likely to win within the first third of the season. I think he gets his first career victory, and has a decent season, keeps himself in the mix, at least finishes in the top 12 in points, just based on the talent that he has had and shown over time. It's his second year. He's learned all this. I think we're going to see more of the actual Keebler Gibbs, not the one that was passive last year and having to fade the fact that he runs over everybody. I think it also helps when you have guys like Carson Hocevar coming into the Cup Series, who's also guilty of being that way, and a couple of others. It's an interesting rookie battle. Former Truck Series champion Zane Smith, Hocevar, their teammates at Spire, an expanded team, 3-car organization now, and Josh Berry for, of course, Stuart Haas driving Kevin Harvick's 4-car with Rodney Childers. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the changes, there's subtle changes in terms of teams. Gagson will be in the 10 for whatever that's worth. Ross Chastain now has Busch sponsorship. I mean, other than that, I mean, looking through here, second year for Kyle Busch at RCR. Go through the 16 car goes back to being a mix of drivers, pseudo star car. Christopher Buescher trying to come back after his best year of his Cup Series career. Try and add on to that the former Xfinity champion, trying to go out there and possibly add a Cup Series title to that. Joey Logano adding Hunt Brothers Pizza to his sponsorship mix. You know, you got Bubba Wallace getting U.S. Air Force back on his number 23 after he worked with them at Mr. The King's team. You got William Byron, who had a career year last year at Hendrick Motorsports. What can he do for an encore? Daniel Hemrick moving back up to the Cup Series, having Trent Owens as his crew chief. I think that's a good combination as a driver and crew chief combination. Now, will Daniel Hemrick be able to perform? Because I think the Cup car is more likely and more suited to his style, and Cup races are more suited to his style than the Xfinity Series in general. That's proof because he only won one effing race in the Xfinity Series. And even though RCR gave up on him, Daniel Hemrick is a talented driver. He's also part of that crew with Blaney and Bubba and all of them, so you'll get good content that way. You got McDowell, second year with Travis Peterson as his crew chief, trying to repeat what ended up being a career year for him as well, winning at Indianapolis on the road course there to validate his career, basically. His teammate is Todd Gilliland. So we'll see what happens with that. Losing Zane Smith makes it so that those two guys are pretty solid. Lane Riggs is in the truck this year, so we'll see what he's able to do. Priest back, of course, in the 41. Talked about Nemechek and Eric Jones. Tyler Reddick, second year for him at 2311. Richard defending the Daytona 500, and his longtime crew chief Mike Kelly back again for another year in the Cup Series. You talk about Bowman, Justin Haley full-time in the 51 for Rick Ware Racing. And I mentioned those other guys and Keebler, Zane Smith, Hocevar, and Suarez in a contract year, and likely scenario where he's going to lose his ride if he doesn't do something crazy, because whether you count Shane Van Gisbergen or Zane Smith, they're both contracted to Trackhouse Racing. And we all know that Ross Chastain ain't going anywhere as much as people hate him because he got the Busch sponsorship. So as long as he's got Busch, and even before he had the Busch sponsorship, he was their lead dog. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. So Daniel Suarez is in a pressure pack situation for him. So I ran through all the guys that are the full-time guys. There are some people that'll be around limited races. I mean, Jimmy Johnson, of course, driving for his own team, getting Jason Burdett in the fold there. Live Fast will run limited races as an open car after they sold the charter to Spire and Trackhouse. There'll be some others. David Reagan's going to try to make the Daytona 500 for Roush, et cetera, et cetera. But what are your thoughts, Josh, on this 2024 Cup Series season? Not a whole lot of crazy change. Basically everything. The main players all are the same. The loss with the removal or retirement or whatever. The retirement of Kevin Harvick is a big hole to fill, big shoes to fill for Josh Berry, especially considering how bad Stewart Haas Racing has been the last couple of years. But maybe the new Ford Mustang Dark Horse will be something that helps them in the same way the new Camry helps with Legacy moving to Toyota or whatever. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting this season. You know, we did not have any major change in terms of like a free agency move, like we saw last year with Kyle Busch going over to RCR or anything like that. And I think that's probably the biggest change in terms of contenders is Josh Berry finally making it up to the Cup Series, replacing Kevin Harvick here after he retired last year. So that's going to be interesting lineup there. We've seen what Josh Berry has been able to do in the Busch or in the Xfinity Series, and his limited appearances with Hendrick up in the Cup Series, he's shown great potential. But Stuart Haas is not on the same level as Hendrick, obviously these days. So just seeing what he's going to be able to do, and in this car with Rodney Childers as crew chief, it's going to be interesting. With Kevin Harvick's going to be advising them, of course, throughout the year, giving him advice, when he can, and he'll be running short track races more than likely for Kevin, as he already has, to get acquainted with Rodney Childers. But it's going to be a tough road, I think, for that team still. Tony Stewart's talking a big game this off season about how they're going to go back to who they are, and reminding everybody that they're still hearing all this nonsense that they've been talking, honestly. But they haven't really shown anything, and this is definitely, now that all their stars are gone, this is definitely their weakest that they've been. So they've got nowhere to go but up here. So we'll see. But it's also going to be interesting with the Ford Dark Horse, the Mustang Dark Horse coming in, very, very boxy aerodynamic profile. So especially on the front nose there. So that's going to be very interesting to see how does that compare with the what's supposed to be the Camaro and the Toyota Camry here. Especially on the mile-and-a-half tracks and the intermediate portion of the schedule, and the bigger tracks like Michigan and Pocono, and even the super speedways. How does this affect Ford? They have the power, but aerodynamics wise, how is this going to affect them in terms of speed here compared to Toyota or Chevy here, especially with the 500 on Sundays. So that's going to be interesting. You mentioned Hendrick, Larson's had his good season in 2021, fairly inconsistent really the last 2 years. Had a lot of speed last year, but they either had bad luck, or they figure out a way to throw away races, and which is really kind of what Kyle Larson's Cup career has been, minus his championship year and everything. And then on the other hand, you have William Byron, who was fairly consistent throughout the year, and was definitely the best driver on points. So Larson could have a year where he puts it together and everything, or I think Byron kind of continues to establish himself in this series, and proves that last year wasn't like a fluke in terms of wins, and goes out and wins the same amount of races, and is the regular season points leader throughout a good portion of the year. So that's going to be interesting to watch, kind of those two drivers go throughout the season. Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, both coming off of injury years. It's going to be kind of both of them kind of trying to figure out things again, and see I think for Chase Elliott, they've got to prove that they can go out and win races, and same thing for Alex Bowman. I think Alex Bowman's got to be able to perform on a consistent basis. I think he's been the most inconsistent of all the Hendrick drivers there, so that's going to be something that they're going to have to focus on to get him better, as being that driver in the 48 car and everything. So that's something there. With Penske, the other Ford team, they've also got to be more consistent. And of course, Ryan Blaney came out and won the title this year, but he got really hot to be able to do that. And as the defending champion, he's got to be able to go out and run consistently, and be able to actually defend this title, and prove that this just wasn't a fluke or anything. So or not a fluke, but certainly just a result of him getting hot at the right time, right, and that he can be consistently good and dominate throughout a year. So that's kind of what I'm looking for there. As far as Joe Gibbs cars, I think Denny Hamlin, I think he's got to put up or shut. But I think at some point he's got to win the title, and especially with the amount of media attention he's drawing. I think he's definitely going to try to put a lot of pressure on himself to be able to go out and win races and compete for the championship finally. So that's I think going to be a big focus for him. And then 2311, the other Toyota team that they're partnered with, obviously Hamlin being the owner. I think big question is how consistent can they be, and especially Bubba Wallace, winless last year, but had an otherwise career year. So can he build upon that and win not only one race but win multiple races throughout the year, and kind of match Tyler Reddick? He won 2 races last year in the 45 car. Technically, the 23 car has not actually won a race. Bubba Wallace he has won a race in 2021, but since then, the 45 car has actually been the winning car in the organization for 2311. Bubba Wallace won 2022 driving the number 45 at Kansas Speedway, and then Kurt Busch won, and also Reddick won, and won last year at Coda and at Kansas. So something to kind of think about there is, can they actually get the 23 car back in victory lane there? So that's going to be interesting. So really, I think the theme this year is consistency and who can be the most consistent driver throughout the field, because I think the first 2 seasons here in this next gen era, there hasn't really been truly consistent drivers. We've seen drivers get on hot streaks. We've seen drivers kind of win races sporadically throughout the year, but we haven't really seen a driver that on a week to week basis so far you could say, okay, they're a threat to win. And part of that, I think, is the parity of this car, how it's designed. Last year wasn't as volatile as 2022, but still there was definitely a lot of parity throughout the field. So I think this year, especially Hendrick and Toyota, can they continue to be consistent, where we see stat lines where a driver has, say, like at least 25 top 10s and at least 20 top 5s, and a handful of wins, average finish better than 10th. So something truly elite, where we see average finish of like 8th or something like that throughout the year. So that's kind of what I'm looking for this year. I know I said a lot, but for a series that has seen a lot of parity and relative inconsistency, can we see someone kind of put together type of year like Matt Kenseth 2003 with tons of top 10s, or a Jimmy Johnson type year where he was truly dominant throughout the season, like like in 2009 or 2013 or something like that, or even Kyle Larson, what he did in 2021. Can somebody go out and just flat out spank the field like every week or every other week, and not like what we've seen the past 2 years? That's kind of what I'm looking for this year.
Yeah, that's something that, I mean, with this next gen car, they've tried to take away or whatever, have more parity amongst the brands, and that's really been more. But the reality is, it's been Hendrick and Gibbs, which has been the same battle that we've had for going on a couple of decades, really, plus. So I mean, now will some of these teams that have been behind, like say Stewart-Haas, come back to the forefront? Will somebody become a star? Will Chase Briscoe take that next step in his career? Will Ryan Preece stake his claim to being a cup driver, on top of what all the great stuff he's done in mods and other forms of racing? What will Ryan Blaney do as an encore, as a champion, with more eyes on him? He definitely did get hot at the end of the season, and at the end of the day, it really, I've said it for a while that the way they've made it, you really don't have to be all that amazing until you get to the round of 8. As long as you get to the round of 8 and you get on a heater, you're golden. And that's kind of what the game is now, getting into the playoffs and kind of playing, racing your way through whatever you have to do, because the first couple of rounds are pretty soft. It's getting out of you making the round of 8. It's kind of like being in the top 10 in points in the old days, of course. It meant something. I think if you get in the top 8, if you're able to advance to the round of 8, it really says that you've done something that year. And then being able to get through that round and get to Phoenix, unfortunately, because they insist on shoving that track down our throat, even though it's god awful, will determine a champion. But we'll also have Iowa Speedway for the first time on the Cup side in the summer. I think that's a triple header or something. Hy-Vee wants to sponsor that deal too, so they'll get more money out of that. But that's the only new track on the schedule. There'll also be the break in the season because of the Olympics, so they'll have a couple of weeks off. But after those, they're going to race, I think, 23 weeks in a row or something, and then they're going to have that 2-week break, and then they'll race the rest of the season on the Cup side. But we'll see what happens with that. In terms of champions, for me, I'm gonna go with. I think it is kind of a wild card of a pick, even though it isn't as crazy as it. Maybe it's not as crazy as it seems. I'd say that Ryan Blaney repeats. That Ryan Blaney goes and becomes that face of the sport. He goes and stakes his claim, makes what Penske has seen in him for all these years, proves it, becomes a 2-time champion to be there with Joey Logano, and they have the 2 pillars that they can that they have this organization on, and then they have freaking Gumby wasting his seat in the 2 car. But I think Blaney in the end does what he did last year, very consistent for a good amount of the season, had speed, and when it counts, he goes and gets the wins. And at Phoenix, he didn't win the race, but he did enough, and he passed Kyle Larson on the racetrack to win the race, or to get the championship. So that's what you have to do, and he knows how to do it now. He's been able to clutch up. He's able to do another thing that his dad, his legendary father, did in the World of Outlaws and in USAC in the sprint cars. So now Ryan Blaney is a champion, and I'm going to say he's going to repeat. Josh, what do you say on who the champion will be?
I'm going to say William Byron goes out and wins the championship. I think they had a good shot at Phoenix last season, to go out and win, but they just lost pace with Larson and Blaney there in the last, half of the race, and didn't they just lost their pace that they had at the beginning of that event. So, I think with him, throughout the year he had the best performance. Byron, had the league leading 6 wins last year. I think he can build upon that and perform at the same level. He just has a bit more consistency than I think Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson might be the better talented driver, but I think Byron, just there's something about him. He just kind of has a bit more calmness, I guess, than Larson, to be able to kind of hang with the situation and be able to make better of it. So I'm going to say that William Byron goes out and converts through all the way to the championship race in Phoenix, and goes out and gets his first career title.
Yeah, I mean that's a good pick. I mean, honestly, for a good amount of the season, it seemed like William Byron was going to be the champion, and it wasn't like he did a horrible job even in the final race. It's just that they kind of lost. You lose track position in a 300-mile race, where you're basically only have like 3 pit stops at Phoenix. You also lose the handle a little bit. That'll play a role there. But Byron definitely took that major step forward in his career last year. On the Xfinity side, it's been the most competitive, I think, of the 3 major series for a while. They have the best vehicle of all 3 major series. The rookie class is an interesting one. You have Jesse Love taking over for Sheldon Creed, coming from the ARCA series, going RCR in the Whelen Chevrolet number 2. You have Dawson Cram, former guest of the GSP, driving full-time for JD Motorsports. So hoping to kind of do what Ross Chastain did once upon a time and have standout performances here and there, and maybe get that next opportunity, which could go and take him further in his career. Family lineage aside, Dawson Cram's a grinder. He's been a grinder his whole career. So if he could go and utilize that opportunity at JD Motorsports, we'll see what happens with that. The other 2 Rookie of the Year candidates have a bit more cachet for certain reasons. Of course, in Hailie Deegan's reason, we know why. I don't have to reference it because I'm not trying to be totally offensive. I already was angry and frustrated and pissed off earlier during the NFL deal. So she's been the most popular driver in the Truck Series the last 2 years, even though she did absolutely nothing. She's basically Miss Hummer 2.0, but now she's driving for AM Racing in the Xfinity Series full-time this year. She ran one Xfinity race a couple of years back at Vegas and ran top 15. So that's the same place where Miss Hummer actually had a top 5. I think that was fuel mileage, though, for her to get that top 5. But Deegan actually wasn't a waste of time in that race. So will the Xfinity car suit her better? Something to be determined, because essentially Ford's driver development program is her, Lane Riggs now with the Truck Series, and Frankie Muniz. So that is quite a combination if you're trying to hedge your bets at Ford. A 40-year-old actor, a chick who barely has done anything in ARCA or the Truck Series, and then Lane Riggs, who is a great late model driver, but generally unproven in the Big 3 series, but we'll see what happens with that. The biggest name, though, amongst all of those is multi-time V8 Supercars champion, the defending winner of the Bathurst 1000, a man that for many years has been considered one of the best all-around race car drivers in the world. Shane Van Gisbergen will be a full-time driver in the Xfinity Series this year for Colleague, driving the WeatherTech Chevrolet number 97, and he'll be doing a combination of races across all major NASCAR series. He'll also be in the ARCA 200 later this week. He's the biggest rookie, I think, in Xfinity in a long time. Maybe we can maybe it's not a long time. Maybe it was Keebler Gibbs. But in terms of cachet, I think in terms of people being interested, he goes out in Chicago and wins that race in a cup car. And ever since then, there's been this like big spike with SVG. But this is the same guy that battled Scott McLaughlin. The two New Zealanders, the two Kiwis, battled each other for years in Supercars. He was a Ford guy first, went over to the Holden side and became a champion. I mean, he's an elite talent, and he's in his early mid-30s. Him and his girlfriend moved over here to the States to set this next part of his career. He's younger. He's got a much different situation than what Marcus Ambrose had when he came here after coming off of 2 consecutive Supercar championships. It was a different time, a different series. So, I mean, just the rookies alone, there's stories to talk about. We can't forget, of course, about defending series champion Cole Custer. No major changes for him. Jonathan Toney returns. They'll add some different sponsorship, though. Sam Mayer, who had a career year, returns. In the one car, I mentioned Jesse Love, Dawson Cram, Anthony Alfredo will drive for Our Motorsports full-time this year. The 07 SS Greenlight team will be driven by Patrick Emmerling, so Emmerling gets out of the ownership business. Justin Allgaier will continue, of course, at the number 7 for JRM. Sammy Smith moves from Gibbs to JRM to take over the 8 car that was previously driven by Josh Berry. Buckshot Jones returns for the 9 car. Josh Williams will take over the 11 from Daniel Hemrick. And I mentioned Haley Deegan with Joe Williams crew chiefing her. AJ Allmendinger returns full-time to the Xfinity Series, and Alex Yance comes back to the Xfinity Series to be the crew chief there. Sheldon Creed moves over to Joe Gibbs Racing, and he'll be in the 18 car. The 19 is a car with a lot of different drivers, 3 young drivers or younger drivers. Truex, of course, being the biggest name there. Brian Truex, who won at Dover last year. Joe Graff Jr., who continues to stay at Gibbs for limited races. Taylor Gray and William Sawalich. John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Almirola being the 2 major players in the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing. They'll have other drivers in that car, though, for the rest of the season, the rest of the 9 races. I think Connor Mozak's probably going to get in that car, and a couple other people. Inbred Austin Hill continues at the RCR 21. Sam Hunt Racing will have multiple drivers. They'll have Corey Heim, they'll have Jeffrey Earnhardt, and they will have Sage Karam. So that will be interesting. Shared ride there. Jeb Burton returns to Jordan Anderson Racing in the 27. You got Kyle C. Blaine Perkins will be full-time for RSS in the number 29. Parker Retzloff will return to the 31, but he'll have Chad Kendrick as his crew chief. Blaine Perkins will have Steve Addington as his crew chief, so a longtime veteran crew chief there. Joey Gase Motorsports now will run Frankie Muniz for limited races. It'll be interesting to see how that all goes for him. Coming from ARCA, you got Ryan Sieg, of course, in the 39. Young's Motorsports moves over to the Xfinity Series as well with Leland Honeyman. Alpha Prime changes things up. They're going to have Ryan Ellis in the 43, Brennan Poole in the 44, and the 45 will be a part-time car this year. Parker Kligerman returns to the Big Machine Racing Team. Jeremy Clements, of course, driving for his family organization. In terms of, the 66 for MBM, will have probably a laundry list of guys trying to drive in whatever different manufacturer and cars. Same for Harmon. BJ McLeod, at least initially, will drive his own number 78. Chandler Smith moves over from Colleague to Gibbs to drive the number 81 with Jeff Mendering as his crew chief. DGM Racing will have Kyle Weatherman and Josh Balicki in full-time there. Mention SVG and Bruce Schickler will be the crew chief there. And Riley Herbst returning for the 98 after winning his first race at Vegas. So part-time Daniel Dye, it says he's going to be in 10 races, and Felipe Lopez will be the crew chief. That's a blast from the past. There's other... so actually Jordan Anderson's going to be competing in the Xfinity race with Larry Mack crew chiefing the car again. So that'll be interesting. They can make the show. With the points, and so that's it. I mean, Dale Jr. will run a couple of races this year,
one or two wherever, probably at Bristol and Martinsville, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so we'll see when he announces it. I mean, we also don't know where he's going to be TV wise, if he's going to return to NBC or not. So, I mean, in terms of Xfinity, you got a lot of these young guys, but in different places. You have SVG, who likely, along with AJ Allmendinger, are probably going to dominate the road courses on this series and feast there, make up a lot of points. And then in the case of SVG, he's going to lose out probably at times on the ovals, but maybe he goes out there and shocks the world and does work there too and puts himself in position for a championship. But I would venture to think, I don't know what you're feeling, but I honestly believe that AJ Allmendinger was best in an Xfinity car. He felt very comfortable. Hell, he went and won at the Roval last year in what was essentially a walk-off shot, and these cars suit him perfectly. The Xfinity Series, the way that it is, he likes the aggressiveness. He can get into it. He's feisty. There's this, and Colleague after last year definitely wants to go and have a much better year. And what better person to have than the guy that they basically, one of their guys in AJ Allmendinger, go out there and win that elusive NASCAR championship. He hasn't won a championship in 21 years when he won the Toyota Atlantic Championship, but he's been close. He's been in the mix. And but this year, I think he goes out there. Colleague takes a step back up, forward to the front, and they will see AJ Allmendinger chasing trophies, but also getting the biggest trophy, the Xfinity Series Championship for that organization. What say you about, Josh, about the Xfinity Series in general and your championship pick?
You've already gone through a lot in the Xfinity Series, but this series has a little bit more change. You have drivers moving back like AJ Allmendinger, SVG, of course, coming as part of his, what we assume is going to be his ascension into the Cup Series and at some point, and lots of other drivers here. But going throughout this field, I think it's definitely going to be more consistent. My point in the Cup Series being consistency, and I think in this series, you have Cole Custer, who of course last year went out and won the title kind of surprisingly, but I think now he's got another year under his belt. I think he'll be a fairly consistent driver. You can always count on Justin Allgaier to be there at the end in the regular season, and at the end in the playoffs to at the very least be in contention to be in the Final Four. So he's almost always going to be a shoo-in. I think really it's just a matter of, can he actually go out and win a title, because he's been so close in the 7 car for so many years that you just wonder if he's ever going to come through and win a championship in the the Xfinity series, but and really as a whole, can Junior Motorsports kind of having a down season in 2023, can they come back in 2024 and kind of perform like a lot of people had expected them to and what they expect of them? And I think along with Allgaier, Sam Mayer, in the championship four, of course, but went from being kind of a driver that didn't win anything and went out and won 3 races last year, kind of out of nowhere. Can he kind of take that next step and be a driver who can be a threat to win on a weekly basis there in that one car? Certainly, I think he's the driver with the most potential this year in Junior Motorsports. Sammy Smith has shown a lot of potential as well, but I think with the time that Sam Mayer has been in that one car, I think he is definitely a good opportunity to go out and win the title here at the end of the season. But I a lot of these drivers, of course, you mentioned Allmendinger. Yeah, I agree with that take. I think he just handles the Xfinity series a little bit better. Obviously, I think the Cup Series car probably fits his driving style, but being coming from that open wheel background, but Allmendinger, I guess he just enjoys racing in the Xfinity series more. So expect him to definitely be competitive. Sheldon Creed moving over to Joe Gibbs Racing now, so I think this is going to be an interesting one because we've seen what he can do in the Truck Series. We saw flashes of his potential in Xfinity with Childress Racing there. So can he kind of take that potential and go into a team like Gibbs and go out and win races and compete for the title? We saw what he could do at in the Truck Series. Can we kind of see more of that potential here in Xfinity now with a better team, certainly than RCR? And then speaking of RCR, can Austin Hill, I think, soured on a lot of fans at the end of the year last year with how he performed and kind of what his mentality and his background. Can he take the time off that he had to reflect on kind of his season and where can he improve? Because we've seen him run well the first half of the year, and win on the super speedways, win on intermediate tracks, but can he move forward and mature as a driver to be a better teammate, of course, and go out and win win in the playoffs, win in to get to the Final Four and kind of win back, favor the fans. I think that's kind of what I'm looking for there. With Chandler Smith, we kind of saw what he could do at Colleague last year. Won a race, won a pole, but kind of fell off in the latter half of the year. Now he's back at Gibbs. Can he go out and prove that he's better now and better equipment? Kind of another prove it year for him. So that's going to be interesting to watch. So of course, and then SVG, you talked about him being dominant on the road courses, and I think that'll be the case. It might be a little bit different because the Xfinity car does handle a lot different than the Cup car, and I think that's what helped him in that win that he had and why he was able to perform so well. But now he's really going to have to get a crash course here this season in oval racing, especially with how an oval car really should handle with the Xfinity car. And he's going to really have to learn the intricacies and the finesse that it takes to run a oval car consistently on a week-to-week basis. So I think that's going to be interesting. But we saw what he did last year in the Truck Series at IRP, and had some good moments there, but ultimately ran mid, towards mid pack, towards the middle of the field. So definitely going to be a learning experience. But I think at the end of the year, I think we'll see what type of driver he is and what we can expect him to be in the Cup Series. So look for him maybe at the beginning of the year to maybe with short tracks being kind of similar to road courses. We can maybe see that he can possibly do well there on the short tracks, and then maybe by the middle of the year we'll see how he performs on the bigger tracks, on the intermediate circuits, where really takes a lot of momentum, and a lot of consistency throughout the races to be able to perform. So yeah, obviously a lot of eyes are going to be on him, and it's definitely going to bring a lot of attention to the Xfinity Series, being a proven star from Australia in V8 Supercars. So it's definitely going to be interesting, and I definitely going to have my eye on him throughout the year. So that'll be interesting, and I think we're going to see very very consistent down and up and down year from him. But I do think he'll be in the playoffs as a driver. Will he make it past round of 16? Possibly. Well, Watkins Glen is in the playoffs, so that's possibly get to the round of 12. So there's a possibility for him to be in the playoffs and maybe have a run. But I feel like it would take a lot for him to get to the round of 8 or anything like that. And there's also the possibility that despite his prowess on road courses, he actually doesn't make the playoffs and everything. That's also a possibility as well. So really could go either way with him, but I think there could be a lot of eyes on him. And then one other driver that I'll mention here, Riley Herbst, of course, ran okay throughout the year, but then towards the end of the year at Las Vegas ended up actually winning. So going to be interesting to see how being the teammate to the champion, how much of that knowledge and what they gained in that championship can transfer over to him, and finally see him kind of take that next step, because we've always kind of assumed and seen for him that Riley Herbst is kind of just there in this series, and can get top 10s, get top 5s occasionally, but not really be a consistent winner. So can he finally take that next step and maybe prove that he can move on, graduate up onto the Cup Series? I think that's what we gonna have to look out for here. So he could be somebody that potentially round of 8, possibly, or maybe a round of championship 4 driver, but he's really gonna have to improve from what he's done in the years past. So it's gonna be interesting, but I'm gonna go with I'm gonna say that Sam Mayer goes out, wins this championship. I think there's a lot that he's going to be able to take from last year and be able to build upon that. So, I think Junior Motorsports is going to be having a good year this year. So, definitely going to go with that here with Sam Mayer winning the title. And by the way, talk about briefly Dale Jr. being a free agent. I don't know how that could happen. So, and how he's not. I mean, I guess it explains why he wasn't at the Rolex 24 for NBC, because I thought that was odd. But I don't know how he's a free agent with the season here, just starting out. So, obviously NBC won't come back till the summer, but definitely that's something that should have been handled a lot sooner than only finding out a week ago that he's actually a free agent. So we'll see where that goes, but definitely kind of interesting there.
Arguably the best analyst in NASCAR, probably definitely in the top 5 analysts in motorsports. I think Hinch is probably the best, but that's my opinion. But we'll get into that more with IndyCar when they come up here in a few weeks' time. But Dale Jr. along with Hinch has been those two guys at NBC. I mean, you have Ricky Carmichael, who's the GOAT of Supercross racing, and now they even have James Stewart at times. So they have greatness in that series, but Dale Jr. not having a contract in Fox, I guess because they have Harvick, not jumping on that option. Who knows? Maybe we'll see him going and moonlight over there, but I think NBC will probably bring him back either, and once the push comes to shove. But we'll see what happens with that. Last but not least is a truck series. What's it called? last year in the trucks, we had, where am I at? Ben Rhodes win his second championship, which inserts him with the likes of Hornaday and Sprague and Matt Crafton as a multi-time champion in the truck series. So the big thing is no GMS is out of the truck series. Kyle Busch Motorsports is essentially now what Spire is. They took over Kyle Busch Motorsports essentially. Mason, so we'll go through the full-time teams. Mason Massey driving the 0-2 full-time for Youngs. Nick Sanchez continues in the number 2 for Rev Racing, and instead of it being Kyle Busch, it'll be Rev Racing / Spire. He'll have Bono Mannion as his crew chief this year, so great experience, championship crew chief in Bono. Dean Thompson returns to Tricon. Grennan Finger will be full-time with Jeff Stankiewicz as his crew chief at CR7, so that's Cody Robaugh's team, and they have an alliance with McAnally Hilgeman Racing. Tricon Garage, you mentioned, is Corey Heim, the guy who's a regular season champion last year. Controversial end to his 2023 campaign at Phoenix with Carson Hocevar, but he's back with Scott Zipadelli as his crew chief. Jake Garcia moves from McAnally over to ThorSport to take over the seat vacated by Haley Deegan. Tanner Gray's back in the 15 for Tricon with Jeremy Donnelly as his crew chief. Taylor Gray, his younger brother, gets Jeff Hensley as his crew chief, the longtime veteran, has been in NASCAR's major series for decades, longer than I've been a fan, to be fair, or been into this sport. So McAnally Hilgeman will add Tyler Ankrum this year. They've changed the number from 35 to 18. Mark Hillman is his crew chief. Christian Eckes returns after a strong 2023, won the last race of the season with the Napa Chevy for McAnally Hilgeman. They're back full-time with Charles Denicky as his crew chief. And Ty Dillon will be full-time in the Rackley Roofing, number 25, with Shane Wilson as his crew chief. So former longtime crew chief for Brendan Gaughan and others. Shane Wilson had success with Brendan Gaughan in the truck series way back, like 21 years ago. Can Ty Dillon kind of resurrect his career? If you can make an argument that he ever had one, but can he go out there and actually win races? He hasn't been a winner in a long time, so can he go out there and win in this truck? D Burrito won a race, but his sterling personality and his own arrogance probably is the reason why he's not driving that truck. Brett Holmes returns this for a second year, gets Mike Shiplett as his crew chief, and they're going to have a alliance with Spire. Lawless Allen moves from Nice to Reum Brothers. Lane Riggs, I mentioned, will be the full-time driver of the Front Row Motorsports Ford, vacated by Zane Smith. The new combination at Nice Motorsports will be Matt Mills in the 42, which was Hocevar's truck, and then Bailey Curry will be driving the 41. Daniel Dye will join McAnally Hilgeman with Blake Bainbridge as his crew chief, longtime crew chief in the sport. So McAnally Hilgeman becomes a 3-truck organization full-time. Then Nice Motorsports of 45 will have multiple drivers, including Ross Chastain, Johnny Sauter, Caden Honeycutt, Connor Mozak. A new team for Thad Moffitt, the grandson of Mr. the King, and longtime crew chief, former Winston West Series champion Doug George will be there. The Faction 46 Chevrolet team. Halmar Racing, Halmar Friesen Racing, Toyota will be Stuball, and Jimmy Villeneuve, who was with Kyle Busch Motorsports, will now move over. So full-on Canadian combination there. Timmy Hill will run full-time this season in his family-owned Toyota. Raja Karuth joins Spire Motorsports full-time. We'll have HendrickCars.com for at least 10 races. Chad Walter will be his crew chief. So Spire right now has Raja, and they also have the 7, which will be a star vehicle. Kyle Busch will run his 5 races in that truck. Nick Sanchez also will be Raja's teammate. So Raja moving from GMS over to that team. Spencer Boyd takes some of the GMS equipment to start what is Freedom Racing Enterprises. It's quite a team name. Chase Purdy will drive in for Spire, basically staying at the team after being the driver of the 4 truck last year for KBM. This year it'll be the 77, so you have the symmetry number-wise with the organization. They have all the same numbers as they do in the Cup Series, outside, of course, the 2, but then that's not theoretically their deal there full-time. It's the Rev Racing team. Then, of course, the ageless Matt Crafton and the Thor Sport 88. And then part-time truck, the 91. We'll have Zane Smith for 4 races and Jack Wood for a part-time schedule. And then Ty Majeski, Ben Rhodes, the 2 other Thor Sport drivers. Of course, Ben Rhodes trying to become a 3-time Truck Series champion this coming year. We'll see if that actually could take place. So, there's some part-time trucks and a lot of people that we haven't heard anything about in regards to who's going to be in the field. They might make limited starts. But I guess we have to look at Spire taking over the effort, running 3 full-time trucks there, essentially 4, not by name, but 4 full-time trucks, 3 cup cars. So that's crazy to think. There, once upon a time, they only had 2 cars. They were only running 1 somewhat quote competitive, air quote competitive car, and now they're running 7 vehicles at Daytona this coming weekend. That's one team to look at with the talent they have. McAnally Hilgeman's expansion, with Christian Eckes, of course, being their lead dog, and was one of the better drivers through the season, but fell short in the playoffs. And then Tricon with the Corey Heim, who's one of the prospects for Toyota. After what he did at Phoenix, how will he set the tone for this year? Will he continue that kind of trend, or will he be the guy that dominated the regular season and look like a likely favorite and or champion, even in the race at Phoenix prior to Hocevar went dumping him? To me, I mean, I have a hard time believing anybody else. I know that, Thor Sport, they seem to find a way to always be around when it counts. I think Ty Majeski, of course, is their best driver and has gotten close in these recent years, but hasn't been able to close the deal. If you were going to ask me who my second choice would be, it would be Ty Majeski, not just because he's one of my favorite drivers, but just his talent, ability, that organization. I think that's the right combination to go and win a championship. But I think the champion is going to be Corey Heim this year. He's going to close the deal, finish the job. He didn't do it last year. Granted, he got help with it, and then he lost his mind. He goes and shows why he's considered one of the top prospects in NASCAR. And with Scott Zipadelli, goes out there and wins that championship in 2024. But I wouldn't, and one other person that we should look at is Lane Riggs, because of his potential and the talent he has shown, being a Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Racing Series champion, someone that has been in the eye, been in with Dale Jr., seeing a lot of potential in him. Of course, the son of Scott Riggs, somebody who's had to grind to get to this spot. Front Row Motorsports is a perfect opportunity, a place where they've taken sons of former Cup drivers, of course, and been successful or had various degrees of success. So, and then Zane Smith being a champion in that truck a couple of years ago. So he's someone that has potential to break out and maybe shock the world and go out and win a championship. But I do think it's going to be Corey Heim. How about you, Josh? What are your thoughts on this Truck Series season and some of the changes that have taken place?
Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely with KBM transferring over, selling out, going, becoming Spire effectively, and that's going to be an interesting one. But it is interesting because not only a couple of years ago were they effectively a start and park team, and now they're on the cups of kind of being one of the mid-level powerhouses in this sport across all three series. So that's quite a transformation there. But they're going to give drivers a lot of opportunity, of course. But I think Nick Sanchez showed a lot of potential last season, and I think he's somebody that can kind of take that next step and be a race-winning driver this year, and be someone that can competes consistently in the series. Christian Eckes, he's been fairly solid over the last couple of years. Ben Rhodes, of course, a two-time champion, and if he wins a third, I mean, somehow he's going to be on the level of Ron Hornaday, Jack Sprague, and all those guys, like you said, Todd Bodine, Greg Biffle, even. So, which I feel like he's not really that level of a driver, compared to those old Truck Series veterans. But certainly, if he somehow wins a third one, it's going to be in terms of the Truck Series, definitely on that same level. There. But I mean, Corey Heim, definitely, with the way that he, kind of affected the championship last year, definitely going to be interesting, to see how he comes back from that, and can he, go out and dominate again, which I think he can. But it's definitely going to be a tough deal to go back to Phoenix at the end and try to win the championship there. So, it's definitely going to be a interesting season for him. Of course, Matt Crafton, always a solid driver as well. So can we see him kind of go out and compete and potentially go for another title? So the Truck Series is going to be interesting. Carruth, of course, with Spire, and having that support, after being with GMS, can he help that team help him, elevate his game? Can he be a driver that can kind of break through and go out and potentially win a race? That's would be huge, of course, for him. Of course, for Spire as well would be big, and has sponsorship from Hendrick, so that's going to be an interesting partnership there, and potentially get into a ride with possibly with Hendrick or Spire in the Xfinity series. So definitely something to kind of look out for here this season. But yeah, I mean the Truck Series has a lot of drivers that potentially could come out and be something this year, and you wonder after how the Phoenix race ended last year with the mess that turned into, and really what the Truck Series had a lot of mess last year. Do the drivers collectively look and say, hey, we can do better, and put on a decent show without tearing up stuff like every other week? So that's something that I think the drivers gonna have to look at and kind of have to agree to collectively race with respect here. So we'll see, but I think with the lack of veteran presence in this series is going to be something. Matt Crafton's not going to be here forever. Infinger can be around, but certainly he's going to a new team, so you wonder how competitive will he really be. And then you have other drivers that have stuck around for a long time who are going to end up being veterans in the series, like Ben Rhodes, but he's still a very young driver. Stuart Friesen, Timmy Hill, those guys going to have to really show the type of respect and things that a lot of these young drivers need to be able to mature. And you wonder just how much of that can really happen, or are we just gonna have to kind of know that the Truck Series is kind of a joke series in terms of the seriousness that we kind of expect from racing, and or we should just kind of take a prop bet on there being lots and lots of crashes here, or can we expect to kind of see the standard that I feel like the Truck Series had from when it was originally the Craftsman Truck Series in 1995 through 2008, or is it going to be more like what it's been in recent years?
Yeah, that's something. The quality of the racing has gone downhill. The announcing, of course, too, doesn't help. And the coverage of the Truck Series has gone down the toilet as well. Can they recover? Can we see young talent race with each other without going and destroying each other for race wins? That would be a novel concept. We'll see what happens. Just to double check, who did you pick for your champion?
Oh yeah, my champion in the series. I'm also gonna go with Corey Heim. I think he's a title driver, really only driver that I see in this series that can go out and win the title.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense the way he drove last year, with the continuity as well. I really have a hard time believing that he's going to be beaten. He's going to take it out of the hands of all these other guys. There are veteran presence guys like Ty Majeski, Rhodes, who has somehow or another won 2 championships. Crafton, who's like 190 years old. There's other people out there. Chevrolet has a much stronger presence, albeit with different organizations. Spire and MHR being the two main teams there, but we'll see how that all goes this year. So we'll move forward. Formula One. We talked about Karen Horner getting nailed with sexual harassment or whatever accusations. The troll Bernie Ecclestone has been involved in this, I don't know if he was trying to cover up for his buddy, because I think he's been family friends with Horner's dad and has known Christian for a long time. But now rumors are that he might be on the outs, or that they're asking him to step down based on just the PR of it all. The Dietrich Matisich's son, who now, of course, owns Red Bull, being a part of it. So one of the bigger faces in Formula One, one of the more controversial figures in Formula One, could be leaving. I mean, on top of that, there are rumors that him and Fish Lips weren't getting along, so it's convenient that something comes out about him that's incendiary. And then there'd probably, I mean, I don't doubt that he's guilty of that, even though who knows, we don't have full proof of it, but he just seems like that kind of guy. But then you add the fact that Fish Lips didn't like him, or God had fallen out of favor with them, and he basically runs the organization, and he listens to that racist douchebag One-Eyed Marco. So it might be the end for Karen Horner, as we know it, as the team principal at Red Bull. He's been the team principal there for nearly 20 years, or at least, well, going on 20 years, because I think, what was it, 2005, when they first started in Formula One, when they bought the Jaguar team. So one of the longest tenured people in Formula One, and now he might be out. There was livery reveals. Different organizations had their livery reveals. If you want to hear a more deeper breakdown on all the liveries that have been debuted so far in the winter prior to today, earlier today, which saw Aston Martin show their car. You can listen to the Grid Talk, the latest episode of Grid Talk. I was on that episode. Charlie White as well, and Tom Horrocks, who's a former guest on this show, was the host. So you can listen to that and our takes on all the liveries that were shown so far. 6 of the teams have put their liveries out. So that left 4 more to come, that Aston Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, all to debut theirs. So the top 4 teams in the championship all are going to show theirs here in the next few, or 4 of the top 5 teams in the championship, McLaren being the other one, showing their liveries here over the next few days. A lot of bare carbon because of weight saving, making the cars ugly. They all basically look the same aero-wise. The V-Carb, Visa Cash App car has so far been the kind of standout. The Steak Kick, Sauber, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, or Petronas, something is green, and that's about it.
Ugly.
I mean, at least they add a different color to the mix, because their cars have not been all that flashy or great, but it is an ugly car. But I think the ugliest one is the Alpine. They completely just missed the boat on that one, and it's kind of just weak. We also have McLaren, who more monochrome combination with their orange, so it's almost like harkening back to Ron Dennis's paint, the schemes of Ron Dennis's time. I don't know why, especially when you consider how good their IndyCar liveries are, that they were so bad with their Formula One livery, but so be it. Trying to think. Yeah, Alpine, Sauber, McLaren, and the Toro Rosso team, and Aston right now. So 3 of them.
Ferrari, Mercedes,
and Williams. Yeah, Williams also had their their livery reveal in New York City, no less. And it's more of a consistent trend of a scheme for them, keeping the blues. They added touches of Frank Williams' initial paint schemes and logo onto the car. Komatsu is their new major sponsor. You have the Duracell battery, of course, on the air scoop. Car's nice and clean, presenting. So yeah, that's and Haas also incorporating their branding pretty well, with MoneyGram and Gene being there, but their car's gonna suck, so it really doesn't matter. So those are the 6 teams that you did you look at any of the other ones? Any of those stand out to you? The V Carb kind of beat out everybody else just by default for you, Josh, or was there somebody else that kind of did all right?
I mean, I think, well, I mean, the Formula One liveries there, I feel like it's either love it or hate it for me, because one thing that I always know, especially in this current era, is that there's a lot of logos, and obviously, I mean, that it says a lot about the sport, and one thing, it's good to have lots of sponsors, but on the other half, it does, I feel like, especially McLaren, kind of takes away from their scheme. I mean, they've got, lots and lots of partners, and, Google, like, it looks like they've got Google, like, Chrome wheels, but then they're trying to mix in the classic McLaren papaya orange with carbon fiber black, and it's just a hodgepodge mashup of colors that I don't know if totally go well together there. But I mean, I think the red, the Toro Rosso red RB, whatever you want to call it, seems that, I mean, the branding, with all the branding that they have, seems to kind of blend in well. So it's good there. I'll say that the Aston Martin, I think, did a good job with their livery as well. I think it's a clean livery. It doesn't have too many contrasting colors there or anything like that, and all the logos are fairly well placed. So I think that's a good classic design there. So, and of course the Sauber Stake F1 team, which apparently Stake, they're not even. I think they had they was it that they might not even be able to call it Stake or something like that. So
they're not incorporated in Switzerland, which is where the team is based out of.
Yeah, so that's an interesting storyline there. Haas did, I think they're another team that kind of incorporated their branding. And of course, it is Haas, but their branding and everything very prominent throughout. But you don't have too many contrasting colors or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I think Sauber, I mean, it's green, but it's very ugly to me, and everything. So, and the Alpine, of course, BWT on there, and pink and blue and all that. I don't know. I don't really like it. So, yeah, I think the RB and the Haas, I think, are the ones so far that stand out to me, of course. And of course, we still have Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. So, should be interesting. Of course, Ferrari always has very classic schemes, of course, that kind of goes with their iconic red color. Mercedes, it's gonna be interesting. This will be the last Lewis Hamilton, time with driving with Mercedes. What kind of car are they gonna have for him? What type of livery are they gonna have for his last year with Mercedes? Will it be the Silver Arrows, or will it be the black Mercedes that they've run since 2020? For the most part, except for 2022. So that should be interesting. Of course, Red Bull will more than likely be the same as usual. So we'll see, how many logos they'll have on there, to the point where, you forget that it's even Red Bull sponsoring the car, or, owning the car, and how prominent will we see like logos like, Walmart will be on there, Oracle, and all these other brands. So that should be interesting, but more than likely look the same, just like Verstappen said it more than likely would be.
Yep, we'll definitely talk about it more next week when they finish debuting all the liveries here in 2024 Formula One. And the Mercedes, as Josh mentioned, the last one for Lewis before he moves over to Ferrari. First one designed by James Allison. Will they come back towards the front? Will they be battling with Red Bull? Will they even make fish lip sweat? Something to see about that there. There's news about they talked to Napoleon Alonso. His obsession with Lewis Hamilton continues, and that he's like, it wasn't Lewis's dream a year ago to be in a Ferrari, though in 2015 he was quoted as saying as such. So, I mean, it's typical Fernando Alonso. He's just angry and jealous that he has made terrible decisions in his career multiple times over, and he's made the wrong choice with teams. He went to McLaren after winning 2 consecutive championships and just happened to walk in when Lewis Hamilton came in as a rookie. And from that moment on, he's had a hard-on against him. He's watched Lewis pass him multiple times over, not just in statistics, but on the racetrack, and become a greater driver, a greater presence. And he's just a bitter guy, and it comes off in the media that way. And for the kind of talent that he is, and for what he has done in his career, it seems pretty classless, but that's Fernando Alonso for you. I guess you're once a dick, always a dick. And it comes to that. He works with one, so in Lance Stroll, so kind of makes sense that he drives for Aston Martin. Speaking of Aston Martin, we had their livery debut. We also have American Jack Crawford, who left the Red Bull driver development program and now will be a part of Aston Martin's driver development program. What does that really mean? I don't know. If Fred decides to go to Mercedes or go elsewhere, that would open up a ride, but Felipe Drogovic is already there, and he's a former Formula 2 champion, so he'd get first dibs. The fact that Stroll never is going to get fired, even though he's atrocious, maybe gives him an option, since they seemingly are spending more time in America, but they don't want to have a legitimate American team. But credit to Jack Crawford to land on his feet and get an opportunity with them, whatever it may mean in general. Joined the Aston young driver, 18-year-old American, first ace of 22 program. Will be combined, so he'll be racing with Dams in F2. I'm proud to take this next step in my career, he's quoted as saying. So it looks like they're very serious about him, so that's good. It's better than, being in the Red Bull buzzsaw with One-Eyed Marco and his unrealistic standards that have run off I don't know how many drivers. But the irony is, for as bad of a guy as he is and how many people he's run out the door, they have produced a lot of top-level drivers in other series. You can see him scattered all over the world, really, whether it's in Formula E, whether it's in IMSA World Endurance Championship, whether it's IndyCar. They're all over the place, but not much in Formula One, unless your name is Daniel Ricciardo. We'll see what happens. Forgot to mention this last week. The defending V8 Supercars champion Brodie Kostecki right now is not going to be driving for Erebus at the Bathurst 500 to start the 2024 season, and multiple partners for Erebus are not returning. So you're looking at the team, it's like essentially winning the championship and then disappearing the next year, in which, I mean, in terms of they have the charter system or whatever they call it, in the supercars. So they're going to have to show up and put 2 cars on the racetrack, but they're not going to have their champion. He's somebody that Richard Childress is very interested in. He has Boost Mobile sponsor. The Boost Mobile guy is one of his basically benefactors. So Brodie Kostecki could end up here in the United States before things are done, running whatever, probably in limited cup races, probably racing a little bit of IMSA if he decides to come over to the States, or he might stay in Australia and still race in the supercars since he's got a contract with Erebus, but we'll see what all happens with that. It's kind of crazy to be the defending series champion and be this close to the season, and we still don't know what's going on sponsor wise and, you know, whatever championship wise for him. Like, we're competing for one. It's got, you know, a lot of feels like the old days in Formula One where people would wait till the last second. Senna waited until the last possible moment to commit to driving in Formula One in '93 and basically was on a race-to-race contract. I don't think they could do that in this day and age, but we'll see what happens, though. There's been multiple MotoGP teams making their reveal. Mentioned Trackhouse Racing a few weeks ago. Takeaways from testing: if you're a fan of Ducati, then you're going to be happy. It looks like Pecco Bagnaia is even faster now, but then you have all the different teams there, whether it's the new bike or last year's bike, they're all in, it seems, in the mix. Honda's far back, but there are signs with some of the new changes they brought to the table. Yamaha trying to keep Fabio Quartararo. They're gonna need a lot of help with that. They're bringing in a new rider at Yamaha with I'm forgetting here. Yeah, Alex Rins. After he was at LCR Honda last year, he'll come to Yamaha, former Suzuki factory rider, and so so he's got a better relationship with Quartararo than Quartararo ever had with Morbidelli. But will that matter? Who knows? Will that keep him there? And the Aprilia team, other than Espargaro, right now is a little bit off. But in KTM's testing pace, they are saying we haven't seen the best of them yet. Pedro Acosta, of course, being the big story, moving up from Moto 2 as a champion, being probably the best prospect to come up to MotoGP since Marc Marquez. Can he be that guy for KTM and put them on the map in MotoGP as a champion? We'll see what happens. I mean, the pressure when you're being compared to Marquez, then comparisons would then go to Valentino Rossi, and both those guys as rookies competed for the World Championship. I mean, Marquez won as a rookie, and Valentino Rossi came very close, but finished second to Kenny Roberts Jr., the next to last American to win the World Championship. That was back in the year 2000. Rally Sweden. You had this Rally Sweden, you had Thierry Neuville win that over Sebastian Ogier, Efren Evans, Otanek, and Adrian Fourmeau. They were the top 5 in that race, so battle between Toyota and Hyundai will continue going into Rally Sweden. Can Tanak go out there and stake his claim to try and win second world championship? Can Thierry Neuville win that elusive first championship? Something to see on one of the great historic rallies on the snow and the ice of Rally Sweden, how that goes. In terms of Extreme E, they're having their first race of 2024 in Saudi for so that's we'll go see full right, yeah, for in Saudi. So that's something we'll be in the Desert X Prix, the first 2. Then they don't race again they'll race here in February, and then it looks like they won't race again until July. So that's a way to go and get momentum. In terms of the teams and drivers, there are changes coming into this season. The Iconia Sainz team, which is, of course, Carlos Sainz team, they're going to keep Layla Sainz, but they'll get Fraser McConnell moving over from X44. Timmy Hansen and Katie Munnings stay together at Andretti. Jensen Button team will have 2 new drivers, Dania Akil of Saudi and Andreas Backerud. Legacy Motor Club moves into Extreme E after Ganassi left, and at least for the first race, it'll be Travis Pastrana and Gray Ledbetter. Neo McLaren will have 2 new drivers, Matthias Ekstrom and Cristina Gutierrez, who's won at Dakar, won stages, and is going to be a factory driver there. Former Extreme E champion with X44 with Sebastian Loeb. Rosberg X Racing has won multiple titles, and they will keep Michaela Allen Kotolinski and Joanne Christofferson. The Sun Mini Meal team, that doesn't show anybody. Molly Taylor and Kevin Hansen will be with Veloce, Eon Veloce Racing. So that's the teams there. We'll see what happens. No X44 this year. Yeah, they've left along with Ganassi, but everything starts with Rosberg's team. We'll see how the new legacy team does, since Jimmy Johnson will return back to his roots.
Jim Johnson.
Jim Johnson. Maybe he'll bring back the mullet too, to hopefully just to really bring it back to the old days when he was in the Mickey Thompson Stadium series, driving the ultra lights, was extra downforce in aero when he was one of the Chevy Young Guns. Different time, of course, now, but we'll see what Jim decides to do when he gets into that car. He's interested, of course, in the high hydrogen formula that'll be a part of the series starting next year when they go from being Extreme E to Extreme H in 2025. It looks like Carl Cox Motorsports will also return at that point. So we'll go from there. Yeah, and so let's make our previews and picks for all 3 major races here. The trucks start us off with the 250 at Daytona. There's been a wreck fest for years. The Fresh from Florida 250 for the Craftsman Truck Series. The entry list is 38 trucks for, I think it says 38 for 36, so 2 will miss the show. Tony Breidinger will be in the one for Tricon. Corey Roper racing the 04. That truck will also have Marco Andretti for multiple races. And got all the other people announced. Jason White will race this first race with Reum along with Keith McGee. Brian Doza in the 28 FDNY racing truck. Johnny Sauter will be in the 45 with Phil Gould as his crew chief. And Stephen Parsons driving the 75 for Henderson Motorsports. If rain is an issue, then it's probably going to hurt his chances. I'm not sure where the points are for the McAnally team. So we'll see if they're all able to make the show points wise. Mason Maggio's with a new team. Cody Robaugh's running a second truck, number 97, but he doesn't have any points. Clay Greenfield, limited races team as well, the 95, and Spencer Boyd, the number 75. So, Josh, I'll start with you in terms of your regular pick as your winner and wild card, and then I'll jump in, and then you can go and we can finish off with the algorithm pick. And I figure that would be a good way to do it, unless you would rather go and do it all at once.
I will say my pick and then you say yours, and then we'll go algorithm. There,
Okay.
yeah. Truck series. There's the entry list. Wow. I think for me, interesting that Kyle Busch is listed as the owner for Tyler Ankrum. That is interesting, but
Probably the point swap.
yeah, point swap there. You know what? I'm gonna say that Grant Enfinger wins at Daytona.
He's a former winner of the ARCA 200 there. Is a winner. And then who's your wild card?
Wild card. I will go with Corey LaJoy as my wild card.
That's not a bad wild card at all. LaJoy is known these days as a pretty good super speedway racer. So we'll see how that goes. Driving the number 7. For me, I will go with. This is tough because the Truck Series is a demo derby. It's also a place where people get first wins in this race. So there's opportunities for that as well. I'm going to go with. I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna go out kind of on a limb, but I'll say that Rajah Caruth gets his first career win in the Truck Series for Spire Motorsports with the Hendrick Cars.com, since we all know that once if they do qualify, they'll probably qualify they'll sweep the front row, or at least get one of the front row spots in the 500. Mr. Hendrick seems to be very interested in Rajah, so it will be big for that. It'll piss off certain segments of the fan base too, which makes me happy. So that's my pick. My wild card selection. I mean, we can debate if it is a wild card in terms of experience. It's a wild card. In terms of who he drives for, it isn't. I'm gonna go with Lane Riggs, since in recent years that 38 truck has been very good, and up front with Zane Smith, and even with Todd Gilliland prior to that. They weren't bad at Daytona, and it is Front Row Motorsports. They have a habit of putting themselves in position to win. So I'm going to go with Rajah Caruth to win. and then Lane Riggs as a wild card. So I think for both of us, we have pretty solid picks there, and all of them are locked in drivers, so they'll all make the show even with points. If they're determined based on points, they'll all make the show. But last but not least is the Tate Fogleman Algorithm, named after the winner once upon a time that Josh picked at Talladega. Basically destroyed, but he crossed the line first. The son of Jay Fogleman, driving for Young's Motorsports. And we, from that moment on, named it after him. He doesn't know it. Probably should go and invite him on the show just for the sake of it, but we'll see. But at least for now, the Tate Fogleman Algorithm is a super speedway special here on the GSP. Maybe we'll use it elsewhere, but I don't think it works as much elsewhere. It's something that it's nice to bring out once in a while. So, Josh, let's see. What will the algorithm tell us for this Friday's Truck Series race?
Well, after years of using it, it gets better and better every year at figuring out stuff. So, it's got to be pretty credible now, possibly, because it says that Matt Crafton will win the race in the number 88. So, Matt Crafton.
Wily old veteran has been in every single one of these races at Daytona, going all the way back to the year 2000 when they were unrestricted, and Jeff Bodine almost ate it. The amount of that was an epic race, and yes, Matt Crafton was in that race. So if he does win it, it wouldn't be crazy. Thor Sport has had good fortune at Daytona over the years, so we'll go with that. The three-time series champion, Matt Crafton, the algorithm pick for the Fresh from Florida 250. All right, so now we'll move next to the Xfinity Series for the United Rentals 300. They change that sponsor, I think, almost every year. 44 cars for 38 spots. John Hunter running 10 races, it says, in the 20 car. One of them will be this weekend in the number for JGR. I'll go through some of these. I mentioned, of course, Jesse Love making his debut for RCR, and Dawson Cram, Alfredo driving for Hour, Smithley starting the season in the 6th car for JD, and Patrick Emmerling, Daniel Dye driving the number 10 this weekend for Colleague. Josh Williams making his Xfinity debut for Colleague after racing or attempting to make the show at the Clash in the Cup car a couple weeks ago. Deegan, Ryan Truex there in the 19, Sage Karam for Sam Hunt. Yes, Kelce, Blaine Perkins. I mentioned Jordan Anderson will attempt to make the show with his father-in-law, America's crew chief Larry McReynolds, who almost won at Talladega with Jeffrey Earnhardt in an RCR run car a few years ago. Frankie Muniz in a Ford Performance Chevrolet for Joey Gase Motorsports. So there you go. Natalie Decker driving for DGM in the number 36. CJ McLaughlin, being the permanent caution that he is, will be in the 38. Another caution in Leland Honeyman in the 42. Alice Poole and Cesar Baccarella, one of the owners of the team, of course, running the super speedway, so he'll be at Daytona. Joey Gase driving for himself, number 53. David Starr attempting to make the show for Carl Long's MBM team. Stanton Barrett driving for Harmon in the 74. BJ McLeod driving, as I mentioned, for himself in his own 78 with the Pat Tryson. And for some reason it says TBA in the 97 for Colleague, but on the entry list, but we all know that it's Shane Van Gisbergen. Not sure why that is. And then Daniel Suarez in a Colleague and SS Greenlight combination with Wendy's as a sponsor. He'll attempt to make the show. Former Xfinity Series champion, and the point is he would be locked in the show because he has the past champion.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. We're still good.
Okay. So, in terms of that, yeah, so for Suarez, probably is locked in because of being a past champion into the show. So he'll have the opportunity to race and try to get a win in the 300. So we can go with it. So yeah, Josh, you get first dibs here. Or actually,
you got it.
Yeah. I'll go with the Xfinity side. So for me, I'm gonna go. It used to be a Colleague track, but I think JRM is going to work better together than they did last year at times in these plate races. And I'm going to say that Sammy Smith gets the victory for JRM to start the season in his debut for them. My wild card selection for this event will be Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis in his limited years, whatever, he seems to be a guy that brings the car back in one piece. Someone who has had staying power as a PR guy, has had to fight for everything. Their cars at Alpha Prime are solid. They may not be the fastest vehicles, but they're solid. And Ellis, I think, will be out there at the end of 300 miles. How much of a car is there, we don't know, but I think he's a good choice there. So, Josh, how about you in regards to the United Rentals 300?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go chalk here and go. I think I will go chalk here and pick Austin Hill win.
Yeah,
Solid Xfinity plate racer.
Yep. And then what about your wild card?
My wild card this time. Let's see who's a good wild card. I'll go with Jeremy Clements.
Yeah, that's like a borderline 1-2, like I said with Lane Riggs, since Jeremy Clements is a former winner at Daytona once upon a time and has plenty of experience. But hey, he's another one of those guys that if you can keep the car in one piece, he's a really solid driver, and it wouldn't be shocking if he won this race. It would be a huge story, and I know it would be big for the sport if Jeremy Clements won the season opener, the Old Sportsman 300 at Daytona. All right, so time for Tate Fogleman.
Tate Fogleman says that Parker Kligerman in the 48 will win here at Daytona this weekend in the Xfinity Series. So a little out there, but Parker Kligerman, I mean, he has had some solid showings in Xfinity on the speedway races, and could be there at the end. So it's not that far out there.
No, I don't think it's that out there either. He has done well in his career on super speedways, especially in the truck series, driving for multiple teams. most recently for the Henderson organization, but he drove multiple, I think, for some Toyota efforts, and he won races. So he's a guy that knows how to race on super speedways. So that's a good one. I mean, both of the picks so far, I think, have a great chance of winning the race, their respective races. Last but not least, of course, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. A lot of names and entertainment and whatnot. Part owner Armando, aka Pitbull, will be the pre-race concert. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will give the command. I forget what other dignitaries there are there, but in terms of the race itself, 42 cars for 40 spots, so 2 cars will go home. Of the open vehicles, we I'll probably go the other way. Jimmy Johnson with an open car is number 84 for Legacy. BJ McLeod for Live Fast, his own team. Anthony Alfredo for Beard Motorsports. David Reagan for RFK. So those are 4 of the 7. Trying to see. The NY Racing Team is entered on the list, but they don't have a driver or a crew chief listed. Kaz Gralla in the 36 for Front Row Motorsports, and Riley Herbst. Well, no, they're a full-time. They're a chartered team, but he's not someone who would score points. He qualified well and ran pretty decent in the summer race at Daytona last year. So you'll see how it goes for him. And I think that's it in terms of the open cars. Otherwise, the usual suspects, Chastain with Busch Light, former Daytona 500 champion Austin Cindric with Discount Tire, former Daytona 500 champion Austin Dillon, Bass Pro, Josh Berry with Sonny D, Larson, as usual, Hendrick Cars, Brad Keselowski with Castrol Edge trying to win the Daytona 500 for the first time, Chili's on the number 7 for Corey LaJoie, Kyle Busch in his 20th try to win the Daytona 500. We've heard that once before with an RCR car. With the new sponsor Zone, William Clyde Elliott II, trying to match his father as a winner of this race. And you got Gagson, one of 2 cars in this race that has, he has Black Rifle Coffee. I was mixing Alfredo up with Death Wish Coffee. So we'll see what that looks like. 3-time Daytona 500 winner Dennis Hamlin in the FedEx Toyota. Blaney, who has done everything but win the 500, comes so close and is a really good super speedway racer. Chase Briscoe in the Mahindra Tractors Ford has finished 3rd in this race before. AJ Allmendinger has finished 3rd in this race as well many years back. So he's in the 16. Christopher Buescher for RFK. They've been very fast in recent years at Daytona. Martin Truex Jr. lost in a photo finish to Dennis Hamlin back in
2016.
2016, yeah. Thank you. And Christopher Bell, not known as a big-time super speedway racer by any means, but who knows? He's a great talent. Harrison Burton in a crucial year for his career with the Wood Brothers, of course, legendary organization. They, not their last win, but the win before that, win number 98, was with Trevor Bayne at this race in 2011. Joey Logano, former Daytona 500 champion, in his usual Shell Pennzoil Ford. Bubba Wallace, who's finished 2nd in this race, twice, driving the McDonald's Toyota. Byron, Exalta, Hemrick with Circle, Michael McDowell, a former 500 winner with Loves, and go through some of these other guys, Gralla, Gilliland, Priest, John Hunter, Eric Jones, who has won the July race at Daytona, or not July, the summer race at Daytona, and the 43 car. Of course, we know what the 43 is. It's Mr. the King. Reddick, who once has won the Xfinity race there at Daytona before. The defending Daytona 500 champion, Richard, for JTG Doherty, former pole sitter for the 500 as well. And the guy who's probably the favorite to win the pole for the 500, Alex Bowman. Haley, a former Daytona winner in the summer race. Gibbs, David Reagan, former winner in the summer race, needs to make it either on speed or through the duels. Alfredo, same thing for him. Zane Smith making his debut for Spire and Trackhouse in the WeatherTech Chevy. Hocevar, Gainbridge, Ziegler Auto Group on the 77 with Luke Lambert. McLeod's going to need to probably race his way in. Jimmy Johnson had speed last year and did race in to the 500. He has Jason Burdett as his crew chief. And then Matt Swiderski moves over from Colleague over to Trackhouse, while Travis Mack left Trackhouse to go to Colleague there. So the Jimmy Johnson, former two-time Daytona 500 champion, trying to make this race, driving his own 84. So, Josh, you can go first here for the Great American Race. Who are your pick to win and your wild card?
Yeah, I'm just going to go right off the bat and say Bubba Wallace wins the Daytona 500. So, like you said earlier, he's finished second a couple of times. Most recently in 2022. Last year was in the fight on the last lap. Got tagged in the last lap wreck. So he's always been able to find a way to be there at the end of the super speedway races. So I think this year he gets it done at the biggest one of them all and wins this race. And my wild card here, I'm gonna go with Justin Haley, who's won at Daytona before, but now he's with the new team and Rick Ware Racing, who has had solid performances, the last year or so, like decently performed over the Gen 6 era, so or next gen era. So I'll go with him as my wild card pick.
Both solid picks there. One of the people I would have definitely thought of was, of course, Darrell Walsh Jr. That would piss off a lot of people too, which would make me happy. And interestingly enough, next week for our Daytona review and Atlanta preview, we will have the first couple of the Darrell Walsh Jr. fan club. Phil Spain, former guest on the show, and his significant other's better half. Want to make sure I get her name right because I don't want to screw it up. Is Sarah Davis. She will be on the show. The two of them will be on the show. So if Bubba Wallace does win, it could be a pretty big one. We'll have reactions. I'll be geeking out too. Actually, to be fair,
I will too.
It'll be a great thing at least here. If that happens, for me, I'm going to go with. I mean, my initial one was to just continue this whole Ryan Blaney thing, but I'm gonna go with something that probably should have happened a while ago, but hasn't, and finally takes place. One of the veterans champions that has never won the Daytona 500. His name is Brad Keselowski. He finally wins the Daytona 500, driving for his own team and RFK Racing. gives himself a lot of momentum into the season. I mean, I kind of was borderline on even picking Kyle Busch since the whole symmetry of 20 years and RCR and whatever, but I'm going to say Brad Keselowski. And then in terms of my wild card pick, I'm going to go with Todd Gilliland, because the Fords have been solid at Daytona here last few years. I think the Mustang will be good, the new Mustang. I already picked one Mustang to win. And I think Todd Gilliland is someone that's capable of lasting to the end of the race. So somebody there that to hedge with higher odds, that could go out there and get a finish. So Brad Keselowski winner, and then Todd Gilliland and wild card. All right, so the big one, Tate Fogleman's algorithm selection for the Great American Race.
Well, I mean, this might be the biggest pick it's ever made, because it says that Denny Hamlin, in the 11, co-owner of 2311 Racing, goes out and wins the Daytona 500.
And joins the great Cale Yarborough as a 4-time winner of the Daytona 500, if that does happen. And he'd be 2 for 2 to start 2024 if that also came off. That is the pick so far. I'll say, I mean, we'll see what it does for Atlanta next week, but picking taking a former series champion in Crafton and guys who have a lot of experience, and Kligerman, and then a 3-time Daytona 500 winner in Denny Hamlin trying to join Cale Yarborough for 4 wins at the Daytona 500. That's a pretty epic pick there. Not sure how we can respond to that, but Josh, you get that opportunity since you have your sim segment.
Yeah, I mean, it would be pretty crazy to see that play out, Denny Hamlin. But, and I mean, I feel like if you watch the Netflix series, they gave 2311 the biggest access, and by extension, they gave Denny Hamlin the biggest access on there, of course. Interesting that, how that kind of played out. And of course, Denny has his platform on Dirty Mo Media with his podcast, Actions Detrimentals. So that would probably be his biggest podcast ever. It might not even come out on time because that comes out on Mondays, and they usually try to get it out after the race. So that might get delayed because they'll be partying all night probably. But that's a interesting pick there for sure. But of course, there's another Daytona 500 coming up this week, the iRacing Daytona 500. So there will be chances throughout this week, starting Wednesday all the way through Sunday, because I think they run alternating between open and fixed setup. So definitely gonna have to get into a next gen Daytona race here, because I think they have the regular fixed or open iRacing series that runs like I think quarter distance of the Daytona 500, and then they have the actual iRacing Daytona 500, which is a special event on iRacing later this week. So definitely gonna have to compete in that. Of course, add to my title, Indy 500 special event winner, and now vying for a Daytona 500 special event winner. Last year, I think finished top 10 in the fixed version, and the open version crashed out with about 18 laps to go, trying to make my move, position myself for the final pit stop to try and go get the win. So we'll see how that goes this year. Might have something a little bit different in the works as far as maybe getting help here. So we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be a tough race for sure. Going to have to stay out of the draft at some point. It's going to have to go out to the back at some points to try to avoid the carnage. It's definitely gonna be a race of survival for sure, especially on iRacing. But I've ran this a few times and kind of know what to expect. So definitely looking forward to running it and everything, and hopefully get a good result there. So definitely going to be interesting. Of course, this past week did run pretty heavily on iRacing with the 87 cars on Daytona, running there. So gotta do that, of course. And then anytime that comes up, and actually one of the races that I did, the influencer Dale Tanhart is very popular with the Garage Guys podcast and on Instagram and stuff. But he's the guy that wears the Atlanta Braves like helmet or whatever with the goggles, and wears the either the Dale Earnhardt jacket or the Kevin Harvick 2002 era jacket there, and runs on iRacing a lot. And he was actually in one of my 87 races, and he ended up winning, and was in there on his. I was trying to stream, but I couldn't get. I don't know why my stream wasn't working, so I didn't. But he was streaming, and so we're on there, of course, with our car, and made him laugh a little bit because he's trying to pass the guy for the win, and then he ended up wrecking the leader because the leader tried to go at the block. He tried to shoot the middle, and he clipped the leader, and the leader spun and flipped. So, and then somehow he was able to be in front right at the moment of caution, and he took the win. And then him and the guy that he wrecked were kind of talking it out on voice chat, and it was interesting because he's actually banned currently right now in iRacing voice chat, but somebody else in the race was on stream, watching his stream, I guess, after the race, or they got wrecked out at some point, and then offered to let him talk through his mic to the guy on the stream. So it was like, here, I'll feed my speaker into the mic, and you can talk to this guy, and then let's see what happens. So he was talking to the guy through this other, through one of the guys from the race, and then they kind of hashed it out and everything. And then at the end, I was like, that was pretty entertaining to listen to, and he laughed. So it's pretty funny. I have to clip that and repost that on my Twitter or whatever. So definitely a good race there. So to be in, even though I actually crashed out myself, and I was actually running ahead of him, and I actually when I wrecked, I actually clipped him, but he was able to continue. So kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, ran okay, honestly. Gotten a couple of wrecks, man. It was tough throughout the week running the 87s. I always found myself running in the top 5, and something would happen to take me out at the end. And then last one I did, I ran third, but that was only because like the entire field just like wrecked on the last, like with like 2 laps to go. So I was able to continue to pick up third, I think. So yeah, definitely hopefully that's not the result of the iRacing Daytona 500, but wanted to use the 87s as kind of practice for that. So we'll see how that goes, but it's gonna be tough, race of survival. And I wonder how many people have won the iRacing 500 for Daytona and Indy. So that'd be interesting to watch or see and everything. So it's gonna be interesting, and hopefully we have the right strategy and have the aggressiveness to make the moves to win the race. So we'll see what happens. And of course, I'll stream that on my stream, of course, as soon as I figure out my issues there, which that's on Twitch TV/usailor2, and then Twitter, which been active for football, at JP Huffine, and then our YouTube at Gripster Podcast. Go in there and follow our stuff and see all our uploads, which everything's uploaded there. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a bit racing, of course, and then the actual Daytona 500 on Sunday and everything. Looking forward to, we've already kicked off the racing season kind of, but now going into full swing here, back into racing.
Yeah, definitely. And going to be busy now for a while. Focus now, we get out of football and we get into motorsports. So you can find my takes and thoughts on motorsports and whatever else on my Twitter at PGMatthew28, and also our Twitter at GripstripPod. You can find, of course, the YouTube page that Josh handles with the video feed. I have on my YouTube page the audio feed of this show, and then you can also get the show off of my website, philipgmatthew.com, and basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. So mention who we'll have next week as guests. We'll see what happens in regards to Daytona Speed Weeks, and talk about it all here next week on the Gripstrip Podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. We'll see you next time.